Joining me now is Republican Congressman Jeff Crank from Colorado, who is also on the House Armed Services Committee. We want to thank you very much for being here on your Saturday. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Laura.
All right. So as Trump weighs these next steps on Iran, that's where we want to start. What kind of congressional oversight should be in play, especially during internal instability in the region right now? Instability.
Well, obviously, from a congressional oversight standpoint, Congress plays a role, but at the same time, the president is the commander in chief. This is an important moment in Iran. I have been very critical of the Obama administration when we had a similar situation in 2009, and America left protesters standing in the streets to be crushed by the government. We can't do that again. I think we need to use whatever means we can, and I know there's means other than the military. There's, covert operations, cyber operations, other things, but we can't leave these Iranian freedom fighters alone to themselves to be crushed by these brutal dictators.
Yeah, we're also taking a look at some reporting from Axios that says that Trump and Israel Prime Minister Netanyahu discussed Iran in their second phone call in over the last 2 days. And in their first call, Netanyahu asked Trump to delay military action against Iran so that Israel would have more time to prepare if Iran retaliates. What does that signal to you, and what does that second call mean?
Well, I mean, I know there's a lot of coordination going on between the United States and Israel, as there should be on this, because Israel stands to lose a lot. And of course, America stands to lose a lot as well here. So it's very important that we do. But listen, this is an important moment in the Middle East. Iran is really the only nation right now standing in the way of securing peace in the Middle East. Most of these more moderate Arab countries have come along to, whether they recognize Israel's right to exist or not, they seem to be more reasonable and willing to work with the nation of Israel. And we should welcome that. And we should do everything we can to get something like, this Iranian regime out of the way, not to mention the fact that it's brutal to its own people.
Right. I mean, the body count is out of control. We continue to monitor that as well. I also want to get your thoughts on Greenland. A U.S. delegation of lawmakers held meetings in Copenhagen as Trump is threatening now to acquire the semi-autonomous territory. Let's take a listen to where bipartisan lawmakers stand, and then I want to get your reaction on the other side.
NATO, in some ways, should be celebrated and embraced as being stronger than ever. Greenland is a part of Denmark. Denmark is our NATO ally. That should be the end of this discussion, in my view, because I think to do or say anything that puts at risk our trustworthiness as an ally is fundamentally strategically dangerous for the United States.
So what do you make of that? What's your response to this? And do you think that this bipartisan push can actually change Trump's mind, or is it already down the road too much?
Well, look, Greenland is very strategically important to the world and to the United States. I've visited our military base in Greenland. We have a very important base there. And, it's good. The future of that is important. And as we look at things like Golden Dome and continuing to look at missile defense, that is going to be a very strategic place. I think some people are reading a little too much into the president's comments on this. Look, could the president be talking about an economic plan that he could offer to the people of Denmark and let them choose about whether or not that makes sense to come be part of the United States? Something like that, similar to what we did when we purchased Alaska. There were people back when that happened that thought it was crazy. They called it Seward's Folly. But it turned out to be one of the greatest acquisitions America ever made was the state of Alaska. And thank goodness we did. Through the Cold War, we had America there and not a Russian beachhead on the North American continent. So I think we should let the president let this play out. I do not, they are our ally. Greenland is our ally. They continue to be, and we shouldn't threaten that. I don't think the president is trying to do that, but I think some of these comments are being taken out of context as well.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.